Lina was critically ill, yet the Crown Prince summoned all imperial physicians to his elder sister's chamber to treat her headache. I knelt outside the door, begging him to spare just one imperial physician to save Lina, but he thought I was competing for his favor with Fu Lingshuang, glaring at me coldly. He is my son, the gods and ancestors will surely protect him. Stop making a scene here. If you delay the imperial physicians from treating Shuang'er, I will never let you or the child off. He refused to listen to my explanation, ordering his men to drive me and the child away. In the end, Lina, denied timely treatment, took his last breath in my arms, yet Xiao Jingyi, overjoyed by his elder sister's recovery from her headache, held grand rewards, even feasting for 3 whole days and nights with a continuous flow of banquets. 3 days later, he finally remembered me. Rushing over, he found me trapped in a sea of fire. The man who had always treated me like a worn-out shoe went mad and charged into the flames. The entire mansion was filled with joy, celebrating Fu Lingshuang's recovery. Dressed in plain white mourning clothes, I knelt before Lina's memorial tablet. My tears long dried up, until Xiao Jingyi burst in angrily. He Shu Minute, what nonsense are you up to again? Shuang'er has just recovered, and here you are in mourning attire. I see you're deliberately cursing her, trying to make her unhappy. I looked up, staring at him numbly. Xiao Jingyi, Lina is dead. Xiao Jingyi froze. Only then did he notice the name inscribed on the memorial tablet was Linus. I thought upon hearing the news of Linus' death, he would feel at least a trace of remorse. Instead, he clenched his fists, glaring at me with disdain. As a mother, you're willing to stoop to such low tactics just to compete for favor. Aren't you afraid of shortening the child's lifespan? Shortening his lifespan? I couldn't help but laugh. When I was 7 months pregnant, Fu Lingshuang's cat had run into my chamber for no reason, startling me so much that I went into premature labor. Born prematurely, Lina had been weak and sickly since childhood. To curry favor with Fu Lingshuang, the servants had deliberately neglected us mother and son, causing Lina's condition to worsen day by day. As his father, Xiao Jingyi's entire mind was on Fu Lingshuang, never sparing Lina so much as a glance. Now Fu Lingshuang was cured, but my Lina, he was only 2 years old. He left this world before he could truly see it. Seeing me laugh, Xiao Jingyi's eyes turned colder. No matter what trick you're playing, take off these unlucky clothes and remove the memorial tablet at once. My eyes turned red as I stared at him coldly. Xiao Jingyi, you don't deserve to be Lina's father. Xiao Jingyi laughed as if hearing a joke, sweeping me up and down with disdain. If you hadn't drugged me and thrown yourself at me that night, do you think I would have looked twice at you? I had explained that incident countless times, but he still refused to believe me. In his heart, he had long branded me as a scheming woman. Xiao Jingyi had always had little patience for me. Seeing me make no move, he suddenly grabbed the memorial tablet and threw it into the brazier. If you won't do it, I'll have to do it for you. I never expected him to do this. My pupils contracted sharply, ignoring the red-hot charcoal in the brazier. I reached in to retrieve the tablet. Xiao Jingyi was shocked, pulling me back abruptly. He Shu Minute, are you crazy? It's just a prop worth risking your life for. I pushed him away violently, lunging forward to pick up the wooden tablet, which was burning like charcoal, and hugged it tightly to my chest. In moments, my hands were scorched red and swollen, but I held it as if it were a priceless treasure, fearing it would be snatched away. Watching this, Xiao Jingyi paced back and forth in anger, pointing at me and shouting furiously, "Crazy, you're truly crazy. If you love this tablet so much, then take it with you to the afterlife." With that, he turned and left. Filled with rage, I finally couldn't hold back anymore, bursting into loud sobs. I regretted it. I should never have clung to something that wasn't mine. All of this was my retribution. But why wasn't the retribution on me? Why did it have to be my child? Lina was innocent. I cried until I drifted off into a daze. When I woke up again, I faintly heard the servants talking. The crown prince is so kind to our crown princess. After her recovery from the headache, he generously rewarded all the imperial physicians and servants present, and even held a feast to celebrate. Indeed, unlike the one inside, even after having a child, she still has no title or status. If I were her, I would have died of shame long ago, instead of having the cheek to live. Luckily, the crown princess is kind-hearted to keep them mother and son. Anyone else would have driven them away long ago. I had grown numb to these words over the past 3 years. Xiao Jingyi was a good friend of my stepbrother, Zhu Zichuan. 3 years ago, my stepbrother had held a banquet at the mansion, and Xiao Jingyi had honored them with his presence. Unexpectedly, someone had spiked his wine. Stumbling about, he ran into me. I had already admired him, so I half-heartedly yielded to him in that intimate act. Afterwards, however, Xiao Jingyi thought I had drugged him to climb into his bed, especially since he already had someone he admired. Although he had brought me into the Eastern Palace, he had never given me a proper title. The day the imperial physician confirmed I was pregnant, I ran to him excitedly, only to hear the news that he was going to marry Fu Lingshuang as his crown princess. In an instant, I became a laughingstock in everyone's eyes. The noble young ladies of the capital even took me as a warning. Xiao Jingyi did not like me, and he liked Lina even less. After Lina was born, he never held him once, nor did he ever celebrate his birthday with him. In this Eastern Palace, Lina and I were invisible, unfavored. Even the servants looked down on us, mocking and neglecting us at every turn, and cutting back on our rations. But for Lina's sake, I endured all the hardships. Now that Lina was gone, it was time for me to leave too. Lost in thought, I didn't notice when the voices outside fell silent, until Xiao Jingyi walked in, arm in arm with Fu Lingshuang, followed by 2 imperial physicians. Fu Lingshuang's complexion was ruddy and her spirits high, nothing like someone who had just recovered from a serious illness. Seeing me, a smile appeared on her face. Sister Shumin, I heard Lina was ill, so I brought imperial physicians to check on him. Where is Lina? Why don't I see him? I glanced at the 2 imperial physicians mockingly. No need, you can leave now. Upon hearing this, Xiao Jingyi wore a look of I knew it, sneering. Schwanger, I told you she was faking it. If the child were really that ill, would she be so indifferent? In an instant, a chill swept over my entire body. I knew he didn't like me, and he could treat me however he wanted, but Lina was his child. If he had truly cared about Lina, would he have refused to let the imperial physicians treat him when he was critically ill, and then doubt that his illness was faked after he died? Did he really think I would joke with Lina's life? Fu Lingshuang pushed him gently, her voice soft. Your Highness, don't speak to her like that. Perhaps Sister Shumin has her difficulties. Oh, right, I made this hat for Lina. I wonder if he'll like it. With that, she held out a tiger head hat in front of me. I glanced at it and immediately recognized it wasn't her craftsmanship, but Xiao Jingyi held her hand tenderly, examining it repeatedly. You're not fully recovered yet. You should leave such things to the servants. He's not worth you going to such trouble for. Having long recognized my and Lina's place in his heart, I didn't feel sad upon hearing this. I only smiled bitterly, not exposing her. No need. Such a nice thing should be kept by the crown princess herself. Lina would never need it now. Fu Lingshuang's eyes suddenly reddened. Does sister have something against me that you refuse to accept the hat? Xiao Jingyi glared at me sharply, annoyed by my ingratitude. He Shuminit, Schwanger is being kind, this is how you repay her. Seeing Xiao Jingyi's anger, Fu Lingshuang stepped forward, forcing the hat into my hands. Before I could react, a sharp pain suddenly shot through my fingertips. I looked at her in disbelief. She had hidden a needle in the hat, meeting my gaze. A malicious glint flashed in Fu Lingshuang's eyes as she pushed the needle harder. In pain, I pushed her away. Fu Lingshuang then fell backward in an exaggerated manner. Xiao Jingyi was alarmed, rushing forward to catch her. Shuang'er, are you all right? Tears streamed down Fu Lingshuang's face instantly. Did I do something wrong to make sister unhappy? I really only wanted to give Lina a gift, nothing else. Xiao Jingyi kissed her tenderly, his gaze turning as cold as ice when he looked at me. He Minute, how dare you touch her? I pressed my bleeding hand. I didn't, I saw it with my own eyes. How dare you lie? It seems I need to teach you a lesson to make you learn to behave. Xiao Jingyi didn't give me a chance to speak, shouting to his guards, someone. Minute has disrespected the crown princess. Lock her in the confinement room until she repents, whether 3 years ago or now. Xiao Jingyi never believed me. I smiled bitterly, making no resistance as the guards dragged me away. The bleeding from my hand stopped, but my desire to leave grew stronger than ever. But before I could confront Xiao Jingyi, he came to me first. Xiao Jingyi threw a bundle in front of me. Minute. What does this mean? I glanced at it indifferently. Your Highness has already guessed, hasn't he? Why ask me? The day Lina died, I had packed my bags, ready to leave at any moment. I thought he would be happy to get rid of this stain on his life. But Xiao Jingyi gritted his teeth, staring at me with a grim expression. You want to leave the Eastern Palace? I nodded. Yes. Xiao Jingyi fell silent, staring at me for a long time. Suddenly, he laughed. Minute. What trick are you playing this time? Don't forget you did everything you could to climb into my bed and get into the Eastern Palace. Would you give up so easily? I closed my eyes, struggling to suppress the bitterness in my heart. I'm tired. Xiao Jingyi, let me go. Xiao Jingyi suddenly grabbed my jaw, his eyes filled with towering anger. Tired? You brought all this on yourself. What right do you have to be tired? You want to leave? Fine, leave Lina here. He is my son. I will never let him stay with a mother like you. Seeing him mention Lina repeatedly, I could no longer hold back the resentment in my heart, venting it out. He's already dead. The day Lina was critically ill, you refused to let the imperial physicians treat him. Have you forgotten? Xiao Jingyi pushed me away violently, his voice cold. Nonsense. Don't think that if you hide him, I won't find him. I tell you, as long as Lina is not found, you will never leave here. Watching his resolute back, a deep sense of powerlessness surged within me. I knew that without Xiao Jingyi's permission, I couldn't even step out of the palace gate. But I had to leave. I couldn't bear to stay in this cage for another day. After that, Xiao Jingyi didn't come to see me again. Thinking I had hidden Lina, he launched a massive search for him. When Lina was alive, he had dismissed him without a care. Now that he was dead, he pretended to care about him. It was disgusting. A man like him didn't deserve to see my Lina again. But I never expected that even after I had decided to leave, Fu Lingshuang still refused to let me go. That night, I was choked awake by a thick cloud of smoke. Waking up, I saw that the entire room was on fire, covering my mouth and nose. I struggled to run to the door, only to find it locked from the outside. The windows were nailed shut with wooden planks, leaving not the slightest glimmer of hope. The flames licked at my hair, and the smoke choked me until I couldn't breathe. As I fell, I seemed to see Lina. He had come to take me away. I tried to reach out to him. The moment he took my hand, I closed my eyes contentedly. Xiao Jingyi was dining with Fu Lingshuang when a sharp pain suddenly stabbed his chest. Your Highness, are you unwell? Fu Lingshuang asked, her voice laced with concern as she saw him clutching his chest. Xiao Jingyi was about to shake his head when a guard burst in. Your Highness, it's urgent. We dug up a child's body in the back mountain. It has been confirmed. It's the young master. What did you say? Xiao Jingyi stood up abruptly, his hands trembling uncontrollably. Memories flashed through his mind like a lantern show. The memorial tablet inscribed with Lina's name in Min's room. Min telling him Lina was dead. The day Min knelt before him, holding Lina and begging him to let the imperial physicians treat the child. He Shumin's tear-stained face, the more Xiao Jingyi thought, the paler his face became, unable to hold back any longer. He rushed toward the back mountain. Halfway there, he suddenly caught sight of a towering flame in the distance. It was the direction of the confinement room. Xiao Jingyi's pupils contracted sharply. Shumin was still inside. With that thought, Xiao Jingyi went mad, rushing toward the fire. By the time he arrived, the entire confinement room was engulfed in flames. Xiao Jingyi's face turned ashen as he roared. He Shumin, seeing Xiao Jingyi about to rush in, several guards held him back tightly. Your Highness, it's dangerous. Your Highness, you can't go in. Xiao Jingyi's eyes turned bloodshot. He kicked them away violently. Get out of my way. If anything happens to Minmin, I'll take all your heads. With that, he snatched a sword from a guard and hacked the door open. Xiao Jingyi rushed in, searching everywhere, but there was no sign of her. Soon, the steward eunuch arrived with men to put out the fire. They searched every inch of the place, but no body was found. Xiao Jingyi collapsed to his knees, exhausted, laughing and crying at the same time. She's not dead. I knew she wouldn't die. She must be angry with me, so she hid. Yes, that's it. Find her for me. Search the ends of the earth if you have to, but bring her back to me. At that moment, I was sitting in a galloping carriage, still reeling from the shock of surviving the disaster. That night, I had truly thought I would die. It was my stepbrother, Zhu Zechuan, who had rushed in to save me. When I was 5 years old, my mother had taken me to remarry into the Zhu family, but a few years later, she passed away from illness. If it weren't for Zhu Zechuan's protection, I would have been driven out of the Zhu family long ago. Later, after that incident, the Zhu family, ashamed of me, expelled me from the mansion. My beloved brother Zhu Zechuan was so angry that he led troops to the border and never returned. I never expected that in my hour of death, he would be the one to save me. Seeing me staring blankly, Zhu Zechuan sighed. Minmin, I told you a long time ago, he's not right for you. From now on, you'll come with me. Forget everything here. My eyes turned red as I nodded. Xiao Jingyi and Zhu Zechuan had once been inseparable friends. Back then, Xiao Jingyi often visited the Zhu mansion to see him. He was handsome, graceful, and gentle. Gradually, I had fallen in love with him, but I knew the gap between us was vast, and I never dared to hope to be with him. If it weren't for that cup of wine, nothing would have ever happened between us. It was also because of me that my brother and Xiao Jingyi had a complete falling out, and they hadn't contacted each other in 3 years. Seeing that I had listened to him, Zhu Zechuan patted my head in relief. 3 days later, the carriage arrived at the border. I stayed cooped up in my room all day, going nowhere and losing interest in everything. To cheer me up, Zhu Zechuan put aside his official duties and took me out to relax everywhere, unwilling to disappoint him. I forced myself to cheer up and wandered around this small border town with him, until one day, Zhu Zechuan took me to a courtyard. I was confused when a group of young children rushed over, laughing and shouting around Zhu Zechuan. They were all children who had lost their parents in the war and had no one to take care of them. Zhu Zechuan glanced at me cautiously. Minmin, I don't trust anyone else with these children. Now that you're here, if you have free time, could you help me look after them? I understood he wanted to keep me busy and help me move on from the pain of losing my child, so I agreed. In them, I saw Lina's shadow. Although Lina was the crown prince's child, no one in the Eastern Palace had looked down on us mother and son, weak and sickly. He had been small and thin, so the moment I saw these children, it was as if I had seen Lina. They soothed my lonely, broken heart and gave me a reason to live. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. Just as I was about to let go of all the past, one day, a guard from the mansion suddenly ran over. Young lady, the general asks that you don't go back for the next few days. I frowned. Did something happen? The man leaned in and whispered, The Crown Prince is here. My heart tightened suddenly. He was the Crown Prince. Why would he come to this remote border? I couldn't understand, and I didn't want to. His affairs had long been irrelevant to me, and I didn't want to see him again. So I stayed at the orphanage. For 3 days, Xiao Jingyi didn't appear. Just as I let my guard down, the next morning, when I opened the door of the orphanage, I suddenly met a pair of bloodshot eyes. I was shocked, instinctively trying to close the door, but Xiao Jingyi reacted quickly, stopping me. His eyes stared at me greedily, his voice hoarse and choked. Minmin, I finally found you. Do you know how much I missed you these 3 months? I couldn't help but laugh mockingly. For the past 3 years, I had been right under his nose, but he had never glanced at me. Now he actually said he missed me. Seeing that I didn't want to him, Xiao Jingyi continued talking to himself. I'm so sorry about Lina. I really didn't know he was that ill that day. If I had known, I would never have done what I did. Don't worry, I've moved Lina to the Imperial Mausoleum. I've thought a lot these days. I was wrong about you before. Come back with me, and I will make it up to you. Make it up to me. What could he possibly use to make up for Lina's life? I took a deep breath, staring at him coldly. If you really want to make it up to me, stay away from me. I never want to see you again. Xiao Jingyi was stunned, his voice growing anxious. I know Lina's death has made you very sad, but it was an accident. I beg you to give me another chance. We can have another child. I looked at him in disbelief. In his eyes, what exactly was Lina? Lina had only just died, and he was already thinking about having another child to replace him. I trembled with anger. Xiao Jingyi, I will never go back with you. Give up that idea. With that, I tried to close the door again, but Xiao Jingyi grabbed me tightly, pain flashing in his eyes. Minmin, tell me, what do I have to do to make you forgive me? I frowned, about to push him away when Zhu Zichuan suddenly appeared, shielding me behind him. He stared at Xiao Jingyi warily. Xiao Jingyi, what are you doing here? Haven't you hurt her enough? Xiao Jingyi's face darkened. This is between me and her. It has nothing to do with you. Zhu Zichuan sneered. She's my sister. Her business is my business. Sister. Xiao Jingyi clenched his fists, a cold glint in his eyes. Zhu Zichuan, do you really think I don't know what you feel for her? His words stunned me. What did Xiao Jingyi mean by that? Before I could figure it out, Xiao Jingyi knew he couldn't take me away that day. He looked at me affectionately and declared, Minmin, I will never give up. I will make you willing to come back with me. After that day, Xiao Jingyi stayed at the border. Carloads of clothes and an array of delicious food were sent to the orphanage. Xiao Jingyi even condescended to play with the children in the yard. Watching this scene, I only felt irony. When Lina was alive, he had never given him a day of fatherly love. After his death, Xiao Jingyi tried to make up for his debt to the child in this way. It's useless, Xiao Jingyi. No matter how much you do, Lina will never see it. Xiao Jingyi's expression froze, a bitter smile appearing on his face. I know, I owe that child a debt I can never repay in this life. I really regret it. I shouldn't have blamed you for those things. As he spoke, he looked at me with full remorse. Minmin, there's something I never told you. In fact, I've liked you since the first time I saw you at the Zhu Mansion. That's why I always went to the Zhu Mansion under the pretense of looking for Zichuan. I just wanted to see you. I froze in shock, and then I heard him say, I know it wasn't your fault that day, but to save my reputation, I had to pin the blame on you and do so many things that hurt you. I truly regret it. I stared at him in disbelief. I had always thought he misunderstood what happened back then, which was why he treated me like this. But he was telling me that he knew it wasn't my fault, yet he had blamed me anyway. All for the sake of his reputation. The grievances that Lina and I had endured for 3 years were because of such a baseless reason. I trembled violently, tears streaming down my face in big drops. Xiao Jingyi, you beast, how could you treat me like this? Lina was only 2 years old. It's you who killed him. You're a murderer." Seeing me so agitated, Xiao Jingyi hugged me tightly. "I know it's my fault. I owe him a debt I can never repay in this life. But we're still young. I've already asked father to appoint you as my side concubine. Shuang'er did nothing wrong. I can't depose her, but don't worry, from now on I will treat you both equally, and no one will dare bully you again." "So she did nothing wrong?" My eyes red with anger, I pushed him away forcefully. "Xiao Jingyi, do you know why I had a premature birth back then? Why did she happen to have an attack and summon all the imperial physicians away when Lina was critically ill? And the fire in the confinement room, dare you say none of this has anything to do with her?" Xiao Jingyi froze. "You suspect Shuang'er did all these things?" "No, Shuang'er is kind by nature. She would never do such things." Even now, he was still defending her. I was tired, too exhausted to argue with him anymore. "Leave. I never want to see you again in this life." Xiao Jingyi wanted to say something else, but when he saw me with my eyes closed, my face full of fatigue, he gritted his teeth. "Minmin, I will definitely investigate these matters thoroughly and give you and our child an explanation." Xiao Jingyi left. Later, noticing my low mood, Zhu Zechuan misunderstood something and looked at me cautiously. "Minmin, do you still like him?" I stared at him in surprise, wondering why he would ask that, but I answered honestly, "No." From the moment Lina took his last breath in my arms, my feelings for Xiao Jingyi had died completely. Zhu Zechuan let out a sigh of relief at my words, then smiled bitterly. "Minmin, do you know what I regret most in my life?" I shook my head. Zhu Zechuan suddenly looked at me affectionately. "What I regret most is letting you go to him." His words sent an unexpected tremor through my heart. In fact, when Xiao Jingyi said Zhu Zechuan had feelings for me earlier, I had already guessed something, but I never thought he would actually confess his feelings to me. Seeing me hanging my head in silence, Zhu Zechuan's voice was tinged with heartache and remorse. "Minmin, I haven't forgotten you for a single moment these 3 years. I truly regret leaving you there out of anger back then, making you suffer so much. If I had taken you away earlier, maybe you wouldn't have." I looked at him gratefully. "You've already done more than enough for me. From childhood to adulthood, no one had tolerated and taken care of me unconditionally like he had. But from the moment my mother brought me into the Zhu family, she had told me he was my brother. I had never imagined any other possibility between us. So when he asked, 'Minmin, can you give me a chance? Let me take care of you from now on,' I hesitated. Zhu Zechuan didn't press me for an answer. He patted my head gently. 'It's okay. I can wait until the day you're willing to accept me.' Fortunately, Zhu Zechuan treated me as usual afterward and never mentioned that conversation again. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. A month later, Xiao Jingyi returned. On that day, the usually sandstorm-swept border experienced a rare heavy downpour. Xiao Jingyi stood in the rain and knelt down straight, his tall figure trembling. He had finally realized how terribly wrong he had been over the past 3 years. When he spoke, his voice was so choked he could barely get the words out. "Minmin, you were right, I'm a beast. She has confessed she did all those things. Back then, she was the one who drugged me. It's all my fault for misjudging her. I killed our child. I'm sorry for you." I wasn't surprised by his words. In fact, I felt a sense of I knew it. Xiao Jingyi crawled to my feet on his knees, trying to take my hand. I stepped back half a step, holding my umbrella. The light in his eyes faded little by little. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he looked at me ingratiatingly. "Minmin, I've deposed her. She'll never bother us again. As long as you forgive me, I'll marry you as my crown princess immediately. When I ascend the throne in the future, you'll be the empress, ruling over the harem and the nation." Crown princess, empress. Perhaps these were great favors and temptations to others, but they were never what I wanted. Meeting his burning gaze, I smiled coldly. "I'll forgive you on one condition." Xiao Jingyi's eyes lit up, But the next second, I said, "Unless you can bring Lina back to life." The smile froze on his face instantly. No matter how many mistakes Fu Lingshuang had made, it was he who had indirectly killed Lina. He was the real culprit. Xiao Jingyi knelt on the ground, tears suddenly falling. "Minmin, I know you hate me. I even wish I could kill myself. But I really didn't mean it. He was my child too. How could I have wanted him to die? Whether intentional or not, my Lina was already dead. Even if he knelt here until he died, I would never go back with him." I turned around, struggling to calm my emotions. "Xiao Jingyi, I'm begging you, let me go. As long as I see you, I think of Lina. I think of the day he stopped breathing in my arms, his warm body growing cold as ice. I'll never forget that feeling. If you don't want me to live in the pain of losing him forever, leave and never, ever appear in front of me again." When I finished speaking, Xiao Jingyi was already in tears. He opened his mouth to say something, but looked at my back and fell silent for a long time. Just as I thought he wouldn't respond, he spoke, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. "Okay." Xiao Jingyi hunched over and struggled to stand up. He stared at me for a long time, as if he wanted to engrave my image in his heart forever. His steps were extremely heavy as he left. The guard stepped forward to hold an umbrella for him, but he pushed them away violently. Later, I learned that Xiao Jingyi had fallen seriously ill after returning that day, burning with a high fever that almost cost him his life. Before leaving, he left me a letter. I didn't even read it, just threw it into the brazier. I knew that being apart forever, never seeing each other again, was the best ending for us. The first thing Xiao Jingyi did when he returned to the capital was issue an edict to the entire nation, clarifying what had happened back then and restoring my innocence. But it was too late. Whether it was my reputation or Lina's death, it was all too late. Fortunately, no matter how many years passed, Zhu Zichuan's feelings for me never changed. 2 years later, in front of all the people and soldiers at the border, we got married. Xiao Jingyi heard the news a few days after our wedding. That day, he got dead drunk and fell into a pond. Although he survived, both his legs were broken. Even after treatment, he was left with permanent disabilities. Soon, he lost the emperor's favor. The following year, he was deposed as crown prince and imprisoned outside the palace. Fu Lingshuang, who had been stripped of her title as crown princess, couldn't bear the loneliness and despair of the cold palace and hanged herself. My Lina could finally rest in peace. I would also live well, carrying the memory of him in my heart, until the day we mother and son meet again. Now, let's move on to the next story. Xiaoxing and I grew up together, betrothed to each other since childhood, but he would rather give up the crown prince's position than marry me. Love cannot be forced. I accepted that. But just as I was about to become his younger brother's queen, he came back begging me to marry him. Stop. It was the middle of the night. Inside and outside the palace walls, guards patrolled everywhere. Every few steps I took, I encountered either my own subordinates or those who had once served my father. And I, the famous female general of the current dynasty, was hiding disheveled in a room, not daring to even breathe heavily. I could only slap away the hands of the culprit and whisper a rebuke. The culprit buried his head in the crook of my neck, laughing softly. "I'll listen to General Shi." He was obedient enough, but my body still ached worse than the time I squatted in horse stance for 3 hours years ago. Since I was old enough to remember, I had followed my father in and out of battlefields. All my military medals over the years were earned with my own spear and sword. Naturally, I was no delicate young lady who had never been injured or shed blood, but none of the pain I had endured in the past compared to the suffering I felt now. Every inch of my body felt weak, and even lifting a finger was a struggle. I glared at the man in front of me and said harshly, "Xiaoji, get off me." I was probably the only one in the entire dynasty who dared to speak to the emperor like that. Yes, the man on top of me was the emperor. And the place I was lying on now was the dragon bed. But I was not a member of the harem, I was a general who defended the country. Half a month ago, I had maintained a pure, innocent relationship with the emperor. Half a month ago was Xiaoji's coming-of-age ceremony. Although he had worn the imperial crown for many years, he had only just reached adulthood, since he couldn't hold another coronation ceremony. The palace had only held a banquet in the name of the emperor's birthday, inviting all the officials of the court. At the banquet, I had accidentally drunk a few too many cups of wine. I rarely got drunk, but when I did, it always caused trouble. When I sobered up, I found myself pinning Xiaoji down on the dragon bed. His clothes had torn marks I had checked, and they matched the silver hairpin I used to tie up my hair. When I woke up, Xiaoji also opened his eyes slowly. His eyelashes were long and dense, and when he pressed his lips together, a faint dimple appeared on his cheek, making him look quite pitiful. General Shi, will you take responsibility? I was still young back then. Not knowing the principle of taking what I wanted and then walking away without a care, I only felt embarrassed and stammered, I will take responsibility. I will, Your Majesty. Please rest assured I will definitely take responsibility. I thought the responsibility Xiaoji wanted me to take was just to keep this big secret hidden, known only to heaven, earth, him, and me. Little did I know, I would be pestered by Xiaoji ever since, sometimes in his bedroom, sometimes in my general's mansion, and even sometimes, forget it, there's no need to mention the past. I wiped my face and looked at Xiaoji. He had already gotten up from the couch and poured me a cup of tea at the table. Although I was a bit annoyed by Xiaoji's behavior today, I never made things difficult for myself. I took the tea and drank it all in one gulp. I drank too quickly, and some tea spilled from the corner of my lips. Xiaoji chuckled, bent down, and licked the drops of water from my lips with his tongue. His gesture was indescribably intimate. I narrowed my eyes but didn't stop him. But Xiaoji was not one to know when to stop. He leaned in again, his voice low. He was here just now. My eyes flew open, and the porcelain cup in my hand fell to the ground, shattering with a crisp sound. All my mood suddenly vanished. I pushed Xiaoji away, pulled my clothes together, and said coldly, "Is that so?" Xiaoji replied, "Does our agreement still stand?" "It does." I stood up. "Within 3 months, our country will gain at least one more city. After all, our relationship was improper. I didn't leave through the main door of the bedroom, nor did I climb out the window. Such tricks were overused. Back then, when Princess she had an affair with a guard, that guard climbed out the window and was caught red-handed by his colleagues. The guard thought his colleagues would cover for him, but they nodded and betrayed him the next day. The incident spread throughout the capital the next day, known to everyone. Prince Shi was so angry he almost killed Princess Shi, but fortunately, no tragedy occurred in the end. Princess Shi was an old acquaintance of mine. When I heard about it, I was so melancholy that I drank heavily for 3 days. Since then, I have learned 2 lessons, one of which is never to escape through a window. Over the past half-month, I have always left via the beams. I landed lightly on one foot, nimbly climbed onto the beam, and moved 2 tiles aside, ready to slip away. But from below came a voice, "General Shi, when shall we meet next?" I stumbled, almost falling off the beam. Finally stabilizing myself, I turned around and glared at Xiaoji unconsciously. "Do you want me to die of exhaustion?" Somehow, my words hit his funny bone. He laughed softly, the sound not loud, but my hearing was excellent, and I caught every note, making my old face flush. Afraid that he would see the blush on my face, I turned around and prepared to climb out onto the roof. I had climbed trees and roofs since I was a child, so my movements were agile. There should have been no accidents this time. But just as I was about to climb out, my leg cramped. I struggled like a dead fish for a moment. Just as I was about to give up and let myself fall, a hand supported my buttocks. To emphasize, my buttocks. I turned around angrily, trying to intimidate Xiaoji with my eyes, but it was useless. The young emperor lifted me onto the roof by my buttocks. Just as I was about to question him, he covered my mouth tightly. Sure, he winked at me. Does General Shi want Brother Huang to hear the commotion? Following Xiaoji's finger, I saw Xiaoxing kneeling at the door. He was the current emperor's elder brother, the former crown prince, and also my former fiancé. Unfortunately, all just former. That year, he gave up the crown prince's position and broke off our engagement. Brother Huang has been kneeling for over an hour, begging you to withdraw your troops. Xiaoji put his arm around my waist affectionately, his breath warm against my ear. Because your army is pressing on Princess Shi's border. Princess Shi. That Princess Shi whose affair was known to the whole world was the trigger for Xiaoxing and me to terminate our engagement. My body stiffened uncontrollably, but Xiaoji still kept poking at my sore spots. Speaking of which, the reason General Shi got dead drunk half a month ago was also because you saw Brother Huang trysting with Princess Shi, right, General Shi? Since you chose me to take revenge on Brother Huang, why are you afraid of him seeing us? As he spoke, he still clung to me intimately. His clothes were not fully fastened, and when I leaned slightly closer, I could feel his scorching breath. I moved, pushed his hand away from my mouth, looked at the marks on his body, and raised an eyebrow. You have a point. Xiaoji looked slightly surprised. Not expecting me to react this way, I changed the subject. How is your Majesty's lightness kung fu? Xiaoji looked confused but replied honestly, you taught it to me personally. Yes. I almost forgot those past events. Then it's passable. I put my arms around Xiaoji's neck and suddenly leaned backward toward the eaves. Xiaoji was right. Since I was going to take revenge on Xiaoxing anyway, why should I hide it? Xiaoji didn't expect me to be so reckless. He looked a little flustered when we fell, but fortunately, he quickly calmed down and spun half a circle in mid-air to avoid us falling flat on our faces when we landed in the courtyard. I clearly heard gasps from all around. I was so focused on revenge that I forgot about these subordinates. I thought for a moment, tugged at the corner of Xiaoji's robe, and shook it. Can you clear the area? Xiaoji adjusted the hair disheveled by the wind for me and waved his hand to the surroundings. In an instant, only 3 of us remained in the courtyard. Xiaoxing stared at me, his eyes filled with undisguised shock and disgust. Looking at his eyes, an indescribable sense of relief surged in my heart. Brother Huang, Xiaoji finally spoke, interrupting the eye contact between Xiaoxing and me. What brings you here tonight? Only then did Xiaoxing remember his purpose. He knelt down on one knee. Qi and our country have been on good terms in recent years. Sending troops to press the border this time may damage the peace between the 2 countries. Please issue an edict to withdraw the troops. Your Majesty. Peace, I sneered. That was ancient history from many years ago. Back then, it was because Qi was defeated that Qi Lian was sent as a hostage to marry into our country. Qi Lian had come to our country since she was a child as one of the hostages. When she grew up, she never got to go back, and was directly married to Prince Shi. Unfortunately, Qi Lian was supposed to marry the late emperor, but she was born at an unfortunate time. The late emperor passed away before she could marry him. So she had to marry Prince Shi instead. In recent years, Qi's national treasury has gradually become abundant, and they have begun to have ulterior motives again. If I really didn't send troops, I'm afraid they would have thought our country had no capable people left. Withdraw the troops now. Xiaoji glanced at me, hugged me tightly from behind, looking like a muddle-headed emperor. I'll listen to General Shi, who was the one who asked me for a city earlier, brat. I stepped hard on Xiaoji's foot with a straight face. After hearing the muffled groan behind me, I continued to betray him. Your Majesty gave me benefits, so I agreed to capture a city for him. Xiaoxing's face stiffened, but for some reason, Xiaoji laughed again. He laughed silently. just burying his head in the crook of my neck, shaking constantly with laughter. His hair tickled me terribly, while pushing Xiaoji's head back. I looked at Xiaoxing and insisted on finishing the lines I had prepared earlier. Asking me to withdraw my troops is equivalent to giving up a city. Since both are about a city, the benefits should be equal. I thought my request was quite fair, but unfortunately, I only got a glare from Xiaoxing. If the timing wasn't wrong, he would probably call me promiscuous too. After all, it wasn't the first time he had said such a thing. Qi Lian's affair was pitiful and forced. But my consensual relationship with others was promiscuous and shameless. But I was used to Xiaoxing's attitude. It was expected that he wouldn't agree. What I didn't expect was how angry he was this time. Even after the morning court the next day, the look in his eyes when he looked at me still wanted to devour me alive. Unable to bear his burning gaze any longer, I turned around when I walked out of the hall. What does Prince Juan want to say to me? Back then, to marry Qi Lian. Xiaoxing knelt in front of the imperial study for 3 days and 3 nights, begging the late emperor to depose him as crown prince and grant him the title of Prince Juan. The late emperor was so angry that he really deposed him. But things didn't go as expected. They still couldn't get married in the end. Shi Yao, Xiaoxing stood in front of me, looking down at me. How long do you plan to be angry with me? It had been so long since he last called my name that I couldn't help but freeze for a moment. The last time he called me like this was when he broke off the engagement at the general's mansion. He said, Shi Yao, I'm sorry for you. How did I reply back then? Oh, I remember now, I said. You are indeed sorry for me, but an apology alone doesn't make you a hero. You have to offer a gift of atonement. Xiaoxing couldn't offer one, so I had to claim it myself. I came back to my senses, smiled at him, and said, you can understand it that way, but actually, I just want fairness. You hold the tiger tally, lead the 3 armies, and are almost second only to the emperor in the court. You can have whatever you want, but Qi Lian is different. Xiaoxing pursed his lips. She is a hostage of Qi, raised here since childhood, but not well liked. The only thing that allows her to maintain her dignity here is the title of Princess of Qi. If you cross Qi's border, do you know how difficult her life will be here? I know, Prince, she didn't divorce her back then because of her title as princess. But if Qi is destroyed, Prince, she will definitely divorce her immediately. I replied without hesitation. After all, I had already thought about Qi Lian's fate. This is exactly the outcome I want to see. You, Xiaoxing was furious with me, staring at me as if I were a ferocious beast. When did you become so vicious? Who knows? I shrugged. If you want to save her, consider my proposal from last night. I'll give you 3 days to think about it. Xiaoxing wanted to say something else, but my sharp eyes caught sight of eunuch Ji, who was beside the emperor. He was looking around as if searching for someone. Oh no. The thought had just crossed my mind when eunuch Ji made eye contact with me. A look of joy appeared on eunuch Ji's face. Seeing that he was about to come over, I quickly patted Xiaoxing on the shoulder, left to see you in 3 days, and slipped away as fast as I could. I didn't need to think to know that eunuch Ji was looking for me because Xiaoji was looking for me. I really didn't know what kind of genes the late emperor had. Clearly, Xiaoxing and Xiaoji were brothers. But they were so different. One wanted to draw his sword and kill himself when he heard my proposal, while the other clung to me, wishing he could never leave my side. After Xiaoxing left last night, Xiaoji pestered me for countless favors again, saying something about the stupid bird flies first. He had to seize the initiative to surpass his elder brother in quantity. In the end, I couldn't tell who was giving favors to whom anymore. General Shi. When it came to catching people, no one in the entire capital could compare to eunuch Ji. I had always had good footwork since I was a child, and I thought I was running seriously now, but after half an incense stick's time, eunuch Ji still grabbed the sleeve of my robe, taking a deep breath. I adjusted my facial expression and put on an innocent smile. Eunuch G is looking for me. I was so focused on walking just now that I didn't hear you. Eunuch G smiled even more innocently than me. It's not this servant who is looking for General Shi, it's His Majesty who wants to see you. Me, I was numb. The smile I had struggled to squeeze out froze on my face. I followed Eunuch G numbly to the Imperial study. When Eunuch G closed the door of the Imperial study with a bright smile, even the stiff and numb smile on my face disappeared. Seeing Xiaoji stand up, I quickly stepped back, as if facing a great enemy. Xiaoji froze in place, looking wronged. You're avoiding me. Yes, I admitted frankly. I'm afraid you'll ask for more favors. I see. He looked at me meaningfully. So that means General Shi is satisfied. Did I say that? Xiaoji walked slowly towards me. Don't worry, I didn't call General Shi here today to give favors. He took one step forward, and I took one step back. In the blink of an eye, I had no more room to retreat. My back was pressed against the wooden door, and the bolt dug into my back painfully. Seeing that he was about to bend down, I quickly pressed my hand against his chest. You said you weren't going to give favors. That's right. He blinked, looking righteous. Today, I'm here to claim merit. Claim merit. You were so ostentatious last night. If I hadn't strictly ordered them not to spread the word, I'm afraid the entire palace would be full of gossip about you and me today. I thought about Princess Xi's tragic experience before and nodded in deep agreement. When I attended the morning court today, apart from Xiaoxing, nothing else was unusual. Xiaoji suddenly grabbed my wrist, pulling it up above my head without refusal. So it's not too much for me to claim merit, is it? Before I could refuse, I felt a sharp pain in my earlobe, followed by a slight weight. This pair of earrings really suits you. He let go of my hand and helped me put on the other earring. This is the merit I'm claiming. You are not allowed to take them off. I raised my hand to touch my earlobe. It was cold to the touch. Although I hadn't seen the style yet, I could tell from the feel that the material and craftsmanship were exquisite. I moved my fingers, and the jade pendant swayed slightly under my earlobe. Is this the only reason Your Majesty called me here today? This is only one reason. There's a second. He leaned down very close, his warm breath brushing against my ear. I also need to remind you not to forget who caused old General Shi to lose a leg, and who made you a laughingstock of the entire city for a time. After saying this, Xiaoji stood up straight, his eyes and eyebrows curved into a smile. With a trace of blood at the corner of his lips, he licked his lips, his tongue sweeping across the corner of his mouth to lick the drop of blood into his mouth. If you have forgotten these pains, I will help you remember them. I pushed him away hard. I haven't forgotten. Those humiliations, helplessness, and resentment, I had decided to spend my entire life avenging them. So how could I forget? Xiaoxing and I were betrothed at birth, by the late emperor's order. The imperial edict back then was a reward for my father. His daughter would be the crown princess in the future, and also the future empress. Shortly after Xiaoxing was born, he was established as the crown prince, so from the moment I could remember, I had been trotting along behind Xiaoxing. I took Xiaoji, who was a few years younger than me, to climb trees, dig out bird eggs, and get into fights. But when I was in front of Xiaoxing, I would wipe the dirt off my face and call him sweetly, Brother Xiaoxing, for no other reason than that I liked Xiaoxing's face very much. At first, it was actually me, Xiaoxing, and Xiaoji who hung out together. Qi Lian joined us because of an act of chivalry on my part. As Xiaoxing had said before, as a hostage, Qi Lian's life here was not easy. She had lived in the palace since she was a child. On the surface, everyone respected her as princess, but behind her back, she didn't even have enough charcoal to keep warm in winter. The chilblains on her hands were purple and blue, terrifying to look at. Even the maids around me had never had such severe ones. Once, when she was being sneered at by some palace maids, I happened to be at the door of Xiaoxing's palace. Unable to bear seeing Qi Lian, who looked so weak and delicate, being bullied, I rushed forward to protect her. My father had saved the late emperor 3 times and was deeply favored. As my father's only child, I could act recklessly in the palace. Those palace maids didn't dare to offend me and quickly bowed and retreated. It was from that time that Qi Lian began to follow behind us. She was obviously 2 years older than me, but about the same height, although she was thin and small. Her facial features were already gentle and graceful. When Xiaoxing and I practiced martial arts, she would stand quietly beside us, and after we finished, she would hand over handkerchiefs and pastries. Looking back now, there were already clues. For example, when Qi Lian handed out pastries, she always left the most delicious piece for Xiaoxing, or the jade pendant she wore around her waist, the same jade pendant that Xiaoxing's mother had left for him. I was young and didn't understand back then, but by the time I did, it was already too late. Xiaoxing didn't give me any time to prepare, when our wedding was only 2 months away. He knelt before the late emperor and begged him to revoke the edict. He would rather give up the crown prince's position than keep our engagement. When I heard the news, almost the entire city had heard it too. In an instant, I became the talk of the town. I had been spoiled and raised, able to endure hardships and fights. But I also had a proud temperament. I immediately wanted to drag Xiaoxing out and ask for clarification if he had explained earlier. I would never have been a clingy person. I looked for him for 5 whole days, but he avoided seeing me. It wasn't until 5 days later that he appeared at the general's mansion, repeatedly saying he was sorry for me and begging me to let them go. At that time, I was holding an urgent report from the border. Our deployment had been discovered by the enemy, and my father had had a leg chopped off by an enemy general in the battle. This urgent report was written in blood by my father's closest subordinate. 1 copy was sent to the palace, and the other was sent to me. The sheepskin scroll smelled strongly of blood, stating that someone had stolen the defense map, leading to this situation. This defense map was made in the capital. The only people who could see it were my father, his confidants, and me. Besides us, there were only Xiaoxing, Xiaozhi, and Qi Lian, who could enter and leave the general's mansion at any time. Xiaoxing and Xiaozhi were both princes. They wouldn't collude with the enemy. The most suspicious person was Qi Lian, but unfortunately, there was no evidence. Holding that sheepskin scroll, I wanted to fight Qi Lian to the death, but I didn't have time. During the war between the 2 armies, every moment was crucial. At that time, my father's subordinates were struggling to hold on, but the general was seriously injured, and the morale of the army was low. We urgently needed someone to go there to boost morale. The best candidate was the late emperor, but he had been bedridden for many days. The next best was Xiaoxing. He had learned all his martial arts from my father, and was once the crown prince and my future husband. Unfortunately, all were once. The only remaining candidate was me. I had lost my mother at birth, except for the time I spent at the general's mansion. I had mostly followed my father to fight everywhere. The soldiers were more or less familiar with my face, but they were only familiar with my face. It was hard to say if I had enough prestige, and I had just reached the age of marriage. As I held the sheepskin scroll, many thoughts flashed through my mind. For example, how my father's injury was, the current situation of the 2 armies facing each other, whether I could lead them to victory after I went there, and whether I would die there. But Xiaoxing was still apologizing in front of me. "Shiyao, I'm sorry for you." When had he ever been so humble to me? Now he was even bending his waist. I held out the sheepskin scroll in front of him. "Did you know about this?" "Yes." Xiaoxing knelt down. "I'm sorry for you and master." I looked at him twice, unable to describe how I felt. Everyone knew I loved Xiaoxing. My fearless personality would only subside in front of him, and I would listen to whatever he said. I once thought that if I worked harder, he would eventually see my goodness. But it turned out that love could never tolerate the word effort. His decisive yes just now was a lie. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have come to see me after 5 days. He wanted me to take all the hatred and resentment on myself. I carefully rolled up the sheepskin scroll bit by bit, exposing his lie. So it was Qi Lian who did it. I won't stop you from taking responsibility with her, but are you ready to offer a gift of atonement? I'm willing to be killed or cut to pieces, whatever you want, including Qi Lian. When I asked this question, Xiaoxing suddenly raised his head, and the fists hanging by his sides slowly tightened. Only me. I don't remember how long the silence lasted, only that my eyes turned red at that time, and the soreness in my throat was more unbearable than a sword wound. I grieved for my blindness, and for the ungrateful wolf my father had raised. Later, I took over the command of the 3 armies on behalf of my father and fought in the battlefield for 4 full months. I fell into life-threatening dangers countless times. Every time I experienced a danger, my hatred for Xiaoxing and Qi Lian grew deeper. The only thing that supported me through was hatred. Later, I won my first battle in life, faced with Qi's request for peace. I only asked the emperor for one thing, to make Qi Lian the bride of the marriage alliance. I couldn't let Qi Lian go back, nor could I let them get what they wanted. I would claim these debts bit by bit with my own hands. Xiaoxing called me vicious, but no one is born vicious. 3 days passed quickly. I had gotten used to the extra weight on my ears. And it was the day I had agreed with Xiaoxing. In the general's mansion, I ordered the steward to check my luggage again, while sending the golden crutch I had just made to my father. Looking at the golden crutch, instead of being moved to tears, my father was so angry that his beard and hair stood on end. He called me a spendthrift, raised the crutch, and hopped on one leg to chase and beat me. Seeing the situation was bad, I fled, although he only had one leg left. His speed was not much slower. I almost ran around the general's mansion once before finding a quiet place to hide. The afternoon sun was scorching. Crouching in a small cave in the rockery, I suddenly felt emotional. A few years ago, how could this place in the general's mansion be quiet? I would pester Xiaoxing to practice swordsmanship. Xiaoji would cling to me, and Qi Lian would wait in the pavilion to brew tea and play the qin. I guessed you'd be here. Before I could make a concluding remark about things change and people are no longer the same, my emotions were interrupted. I turned around and saw Xiaoji standing at the other entrance of the cave. He bent down to look at me, still wearing the dragon robe. I didn't know how he had avoided the servants in the mansion. When he saw me looking back, he subconsciously tried to crawl into the cave, but he was no longer the boy who only reached my shoulders. He had grown extremely tall in recent years, with broad shoulders and long legs, even 2 inches taller than his elder brother. Every time I looked up at him, my neck ached. The entrance was really too small for him now. I watched helplessly as he tried to crawl in, only to get stuck at the entrance. Xiaoji blinked his long eyelashes, his eyes filled with a hint of confusion and absurdity. I hadn't seen him look so embarrassed in years, and I couldn't help laughing out loud. Seeing me laughing, Xiaoji's eyes softened. He simply leaned his entire weight against the rock and said slowly, "Sister, help me." Since he ascended the throne, he had always called me General Sha. This sister was the first time in years. Although I knew that something unusual must be wrong, I still couldn't help but soften my heart and gave him a hand. After pushing him out, I also crawled out of the cave. He had already been stuck at the entrance, and then I slapped him out. He lost his balance and stumbled to the ground. Although he looked a little embarrassed, he overlapped with the boy from a few years ago. I laughed, and he laughed along with me. I was about to tease him when the steward hurried over. "Young lady." He stopped halfway when he saw Xiaoji behind me, and knelt down flusteredly. "Your Majesty, it's okay." Xiaoji stood up. "Steward, just treat me as Xiaoji today." The steward looked at Xiaoji, then at me for instructions. Before cupping his hands and saying, "Your Majesty, young lady, Prince Juan is here," for Qi Lian, he had finally chosen to come. The smile on my face slowly faded, and I replied with a faint "Then take me there." But before I could take 2 steps, someone grabbed my wrist from behind. I turned around and saw that the smile on Xiaoji's face was also gone. He said, "Can you not go?" In the sunlight, there was a rare trace of panic on his face. And he exerted great strength, pinching my wrist until it hurt. I looked at him without speaking. Xiaoji repeated, "Don't go, I have to go." I lowered my eyes to look at his hand on my wrist. "Didn't Your Majesty also remind me not to forget the past?" The evidence he had reminded me of was hanging on my earlobes at this moment, shaking twice with every step to remind me. Xiaoji lowered his head, and the strength in his hand slowly loosened. When he raised his head again, he had returned to his usual appearance. "Let's go." I thought he would let go, but unexpectedly, his hand slid down slightly along my wrist, then took my hand with an undeniable force, interlocking his fingers with mine. "I'll go with you." I looked at our clasped hands, then at the steward with a gossiping expression, and could only comfort myself that it was the general's mansion after all, and the people inside wouldn't talk nonsense. But comfort was just comfort in the end. As we met more and more people, I finally couldn't help but raise our hands. What was the point of you making the Imperial Guards keep quiet before walking around the mansion like this? I was afraid that everyone would find out we were having an affair. Before, it was to make you happy. So it was definitely meaningful. Xiaoji glanced at me. Now I regret it. Regret? Whether he regretted making me happy or regretted making that deal with me, I didn't know. The general's mansion was not as big as the palace, so we soon arrived at the front hall. Xiaoxing was standing outside the front hall. Since my father's accident, he had never stepped into the hall again. Hearing the commotion, he turned his head to look at us, and his gaze slowly moved down to my clasped hands with Xiaoji, a hint of sarcasm flashing in his eyes. From his expression, I already knew that he thought Xiaoji's presence here was just a new way for me to humiliate him. But I didn't intend to explain. After all, the purpose was the same. Why care if his understanding was right or wrong? Thinking this way, I simply leaned against Xiaoji, wanting to maximize the humiliation. Has Prince Juan made up his mind? Xiaoxing's mouth opened and closed and opened again. Xiaoji's presence made it impossible for him to respond. After a long while, he nodded with a cold expression. Before I could speak, Xiaoji sighed. Brother Huang is so reluctant. He stretched out his other hand and poked my face, speaking directly in front of Xiaoxing. I regret it. Anyway, the benefits Brother Huang can give you are not as many as mine. Can I change the agreement with you? This was the second time he had said he regretted it that day. I knew the agreement I had made with Xiaoxing was not very fair to him, so it was normal for him to want to go back on it. So after thinking for a moment, I nodded. What does Your Majesty want to change it to? You. When Xiaoji turned his head to look at me, his eyes were clear and bright, reflecting only my figure. I don't want the city anymore, I just want you. Xiaoji had confessed his feelings to me. This confession was really hasty and absurd. So shocked that I even forgot the idea I had long planned. I had originally planned that if Xiaoxing agreed to my request, I would make him kneel and kowtow 3 times and 9 times outside the general's mansion, loudly beg me to take him in as my lover, and follow me on the military campaign. Thanks to Xiaoji, I not only forgot to mention this request, but also couldn't sleep well all night. The next day, with 2 dark circles under my eyes, I stood at the head of the army holding the reins of my horse, waiting for the emperor to see me off. To be honest, I didn't really want to see Xiaoji now, but it wasn't up to me to decide whether to see him or not. Just as I was about to yawn for the first time, Xiaoji arrived. He was dressed in the imperial robe and crown, followed by 4 attendants and 4 palace maids on each side. His demeanor was majestic. Completely different from when he was in front of me, but when he approached, the smile I was extremely familiar with appeared under the beaded curtain of the imperial crown. He waved back the attendants and palace maids, stood still in front of me, and said, "If General Shah has made up his mind, you can become the empress at any time." My legs, which were about to kneel down to pay my respects, went weak, and I almost knelt to the ground. I looked at him in disbelief, never expecting that his first words in such a public place would be this, "Xiaoji." I frowned and called his name in a low voice. "Don't be absurd. If I were really absurd, I would have already followed you on the campaign," he said with a wronged tone. "Just thinking about you being with Brother Huang day and night for so many days makes me want to do something." "Do what?" Hearing my question, Xiaoji narrowed his eyes slightly, stuck out his scarlet tongue to lick his upper lip, and said half-truthfully, "Like how to keep General Shah here, so that you don't look at any other man, in the broad daylight, under the clear sky." I prided myself on having a thick skin now, but at this moment I felt extremely ashamed. Fortunately, those people didn't have time to care about my shame now. They had a bigger gossip to watch. Xiaoxing arrived. He had taken off his official robe and was wearing plain clothes. He walked slowly to me and knelt down on both knees. "Xiaoxing begs General Shah to take me on the campaign." As soon as he said this, the crowd erupted in commotion. Everyone knew that Xiaoxing and I had old grievances. That Xiaoxing was my former fiancé who had abandoned the crown prince's position to break off the engagement temporarily, and that since then my father had severed his master-apprentice relationship with him, but they didn't know that my father's leg was related to him. That the guard Qi Lian had an affair with was planted by me in Prince Xi's mansion, and that on the day they had their tryst, I had ordered that guard to put medicine in Qi Lian's wine glass. In fact, nothing substantive had happened between them. I knew it, the guard knew it, and Qi Lian knew it too. But the world always only sees what they want to see and hears what they are willing to hear. This was the plan I had made to alienate the relationship between Qi Lian and Prince Xi. To complete my revenge, I needed Qi Lian to lose Prince Xi's protection. It was also from that day on that Princess Xi's reputation was completely ruined in the capital, and I became a villain in Xiaoxing's heart. The grievances and entanglements between Xiaoji and me had not faded with time, but had become more and more complicated. But whether the people present knew these inside stories or not, it didn't prevent them from knowing that Xiaoxing and I were now irreconcilable. This was the scene I wanted to see. The shame I had felt towards Xiaoji earlier turned into joy when I heard the discussions. I had long known that Xiaoxing would come, but I still deliberately asked, "The march is hard, is Prince Juan sure he wants to come?" "Yes." Xiaoxing knelt and bowed. "Please General Shah agree." I continued to make things difficult for him. "It's not impossible, but war horses are limited. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble Prince Juan to march on foot." Marching on foot meant serving by my horse's side. Xiaoxing's body trembled slightly, and his eyes were filled with deep hatred. In the end, he still nodded, under Xiaoji's resentful gaze. I turned over and mounted my horse, leading the army forward. I didn't know what was wrong with me, I just couldn't bring myself to look back at Xiaoji. I had thought that after the incident at the city gate, Xiaoji would finally give up on me, but I underestimated him. Reports from the capital arrived every 2 days on average, and most of them read, "Reading this letter is like seeing you. I miss you. Greetings. Has General Shah made up her mind? I don't need you to return victorious, I only need you to come back safe. The night is late and cool. I miss you." Each letter wasn't very long, yet they were straightforward and passionate, so passionate that even the paper felt hot to the touch. But somehow, I didn't burn them. Instead, I carefully placed each one in my luggage. "Do you really believe His Majesty is truly in love with you?" Xiaoxing's mocking voice came from beside me. I turned my head. Days of marching had left this once arrogant and noble prince looking disheveled. His hair was messy, and stubble had grown on his chin. He sat next to me, his gaze fixed on the letter in my hand, his eyes full of sarcasm. I put away the newly received letter. Did Prince Juan see it, even if I hadn't seen it? I heard it that day under the city wall. Xiaoxing leaned against the shade of a tree, no longer as imposing as before. His Majesty ascended the throne at a young age. His power is not yet fully established, and he lacks military power the most. The Shi family has a long history of producing generals, serving 3 generations of emperors, and they have more military power than anything else. Xiaoxing was telling the truth. Most of the generals in the court were from the Shi family or had received favors from them. There was even a rumor among the people that if the Shi family wanted to rebel, the throne would no longer belong to the Xiao clan. That's why the late emperor wanted me to marry into the royal family to restrain my father. That's why, on the day I got drunk, Xiaoji chose to let things go wrong and made the agreement about the city. After my father's accident, I became the greatest reliance of the Shi family. If Xiaoji really only wanted to use me, he had made the right move. I understood the reasoning and the pros and cons clearly. Yet, for some reason, every time I tried to burn the letters, I would think of the way Xiaoji had clung to me that day. The place where he had hugged me felt as if it were burning with fire, a faint warmth lingering. It seems Prince Juan no longer hates me. I smiled at Xiaoxing, showing my teeth. Surely Prince Juan hasn't forgotten the terms of our agreement. The expression on Xiaoxing's face froze. From that look, he clearly hadn't forgotten. Satisfied, I stood up and even took the time to pat the dust off my clothes. It's almost time. Come to my room tonight. Oh, right, I specially instructed before entering the room. Before coming to my room tonight, remember to wash up and shave your beard, otherwise, I won't be able to bring myself to kiss you. No matter how reluctant Xiaoxing was, he still shaved his beard, bathed, and came to my room that night. I didn't know who had given him the clothes, a moon-white robe with silver patterns, his favorite style when he was young, a peerless young man, as noble and pure as jade. When I was young, I had straightforwardly told him that I loved seeing him in such plain colors. They made him look even gentler. After that, Xiaoxing rarely wore them. His appearance today brought back some past memories. I looked at him with a half-smile. Prince Juan is quite thoughtful. Xiaoxing spoke stiffly. Someone else brought them. I ignored whether it was someone else or not, patted the couch, and said, "Come here." The few steps felt like walking on sharp blades to Xiaoxing. Each step was extremely difficult. I waited patiently as he inched closer. Finally, when he was near enough, I reached out, grabbed his arm, and pressed him down on the couch. I patted his face. Did Prince Juan ever imagine this scene? From Xiaoxing's expression of resignation, it was clear he hadn't. As if to escape the reality, he closed his eyes tightly. I leaned over him, able to clearly feel the stiffness of his body. Perfect. If he had looked willing, my revenge would have felt meaningless. I pulled out my silver hairpin and pushed open his lapels. I didn't hold back when pushing his clothes aside. The sharp tip of the hairpin scratched his skin, and a drop of blood oozed out as I lifted my hand. "Are you scared?" I whispered, leaning over him. "This is where the scapula is. If I use a little more force and pierce your scapula with the hairpin, half of your martial arts will be ruined." Xiaoxing didn't open his eyes, but from the moment he trembled, I knew he was scared. "I'm willing to be killed or cut to pieces, whatever you want." No matter how noble his words sounded, he was still afraid. He knew he had wronged me and my father. Yet after I ruined Qi Lian's reputation and humiliated him in public, he still hated me. It was like how debtors would grovel when borrowing money, but act like emperors when being chased for repayment. Thinking this way, I pushed the hairpin down another half-inch. What he owed me, what I wanted, I should take it all back at this moment. I slowly leaned down, looking at Xiaoxing's painful expression, and prepared to kiss. I stopped, just as I was about to touch him. Xiao Zhi's aggrieved face suddenly popped into my mind for no reason, like an abandoned puppy. Damn it, I twitched the corner of my mouth, leaned down further, and tried again, but the result was the same. Xiao Zhi's face dominated my thoughts, calling me General Shi one moment and sister the next. I glared at Xiaoxing's face, pulled out the silver hairpin, and kicked him off the couch with my foot. I admitted I was taking my frustration out on him. Xiaoxing was caught off guard by the kick, and it pressed on his injury, making him grunt in pain. You sleep on the floor tonight. I didn't bother to explain and gave the order directly. In truth, I couldn't explain it myself. These things were all part of my long-planned revenge, so why couldn't I go through with it when the time came? Utterly couldn't. My hesitation was mistaken by Xiaoxing for soft-heartedness. Every day, he looked at me as if he wanted to say something but held back, which only made me more irritable. To prevent my subordinates from noticing my hesitation, I summoned Xiaoxing to my room every day to sleep on the floor. General, urgent report from the capital. After lunch that day, a cavalry soldier rushed over holding an imperial edict personally written by His Majesty. As I approached the border, the letters from the capital had slowed down a bit. It wasn't that Xiao Zhi was being lazy, it was that I felt guilty and had scolded him in a reply, saying his frequent letters might delay important matters. After that, Xiao Zhi became much more well-behaved. Although he still sent letters every few days, he no longer used the pretense of urgent reports. It had been a long time since I received an urgent report. It felt fresh. I raised an eyebrow, took the letter, and unfolded it, only to see a full page of urgent report. It strongly condemned my daily practice of summoning Xiaoxing to my room, stating that he would keep track of every incident and demand double repayment from me compared to what Xiaoxing had received. From the much messier handwriting than usual, I could almost feel the young emperor's panic and anger even from 10,000 miles away. I thought for a moment, picked up my brush, and wrote a few words in reply. Is Your Majesty having me watched? How else would he know such details so clearly? Guilty. Xiao Zhi stopped sending letters for a few days. This was for the best. It gave me time to sort out my thoughts. During the days he fell silent, I led the army and finally arrived at the border. The situation here was even more tense than described in the military reports, and this sense of urgency became even more intense after we set up camp. Xiaoxing was equally tense. That night, when he entered the room, he unexpectedly brought me a bottle of sweet Osmanthus wine. This wine had a low alcohol content but an intoxicating aroma. It was my favorite. Such wine was not easy to find in the north. Xiaoxing must have searched the entire border town to get it. I shook the wine jug. You need something from me. Xiaoxing hesitated for a moment before speaking. When do you plan to withdraw your troops? I'm not sure yet. I was telling the truth. The atmosphere was tense now. If I withdrew the troops hastily, it might affect the morale of the army. And if the Qi army launched an ambush or surprise attack while our morale was low, the cost would be countless lives. I couldn't bet on the lives of my brothers. Will you withdraw eventually? As long as Qi does not violate our borders, I wish for a world without war. But if another country attacked, I was not a bodhisattva. I would first protect the people of my own country. Xiaoxing nodded and sat down opposite me. Your words are enough. So Prince Juan came here today to mediate? No, he poured me a glass of wine. I came to beg for peace. I raised an eyebrow, signaling him to continue. I know you hate me. Hate Qi Lian, hate me for breaking off our engagement at the last minute. Hate Qi Lian for stealing the defense map. But she never intended to harm you or master. Don't call him master. You don't deserve it. The word master was particularly harsh to my ears. I paused while playing with my wine glass and interrupted him coldly. Xiaoxing also paused. Back then, The Emperor of Qi told her that he only wanted the defense map to protect himself and end the war. Once the war ended, he could bring Qi Lian back to Qi. I had already heard these inside details from Qi Lian herself. Her affair with the guard had been planned by me. The guard looked 80% like Xiao Xing, and I had deliberately spread the rumors to make them spread quickly. When Qi Lian knelt and begged me to spare her, she had told me all these hidden truths. The reason she stole the defense map was that she was desperate to go home. She missed her mother, the palace gardens she had once lived in, and wanted to marry Xiao Xing in a grand ceremony as the legitimate princess of Qi. That's why she had foolishly believed the Emperor of Qi's lies, stolen the defense map, and then urged Xiao Xing to break off our engagement. But what did any of this have to do with me? No matter what their difficulties were, the harm they had caused was an established fact. How dare they ask the victim for forgiveness afterward? Over the years, to avoid taking responsibility, I deliberately exaggerated your flaws in my mind to ease my guilt. I drank the wine in my glass in one gulp. Continue. After that year, when you suppressed me in the court, I told myself you had become domineering. When you schemed against Qi Lian, I told myself you had become vicious. When you took lovers, I told myself you had become promiscuous. But deep down, I know we wronged you. Now, I don't dare to ask for your forgiveness, but please don't take revenge on me by punishing yourself. I twirled my wine glass, smiling faintly, punishing myself. It was true that I wanted revenge, but I didn't consider this punishing myself. Xiaoji was good-looking, had a good figure, and was the current emperor. He was perfect in every way. I was not at a loss. His Majesty is no longer the Xiaoji of years past. Ultimately, it is the royal family that owes you. I do not wish to see you hurt because of the royal family again. These years of grievances deserve to come to an end. While I was lost in thought, Xiao Xing refilled my wine glass. I will atone for all the sins. Atonement. How did he plan to atone? I was about to question him when my vision gradually blurred, followed by an overwhelming drowsiness. Xiao Xing had drugged my wine. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was, "When this is over, I will marry you." That night, I was awakened by the clashing of weapons. As I opened my eyes, my deputy general rushed into my room, holding a silver needle to rouse me. "General, how is the battle outside?" "Just as you anticipated. Prince Juan stole your military seal and falsely relayed an order to withdraw our troops," the deputy replied, handing me my usual sword. "We also pretended to retreat as you instructed earlier, and half an hour later, the Qi army launched their attack. Just as I had foreseen, every detail played out perfectly. I had gone to such great lengths, using Xiao Ji to provoke Xiao Xing and forcing him to sign that agreement, all to lure Qi Lian into the trap. Although she had confessed to stealing the defense map back then, it was only a verbal confession. Knowing her as I did, if I had tried to arrest her, she would have certainly claimed I was framing her. That was why I had set this elaborate scheme. I alienated Qi Lian from Prince Shi, leaving her without his protection. Then I used the threat of our advancing army to throw her into panic, before dangling a bait for Xiao Xing. If Qi Lian wanted to avoid being abandoned by both sides, she would have no choice but to turn to Xiao Xing for help, and Xiao Xing had not disappointed me, to keep a closer eye on their movements. I deliberately summoned Xiao Xing to my room every night, ostensibly to humiliate him, but in truth, to kill two birds with one stone. I needed to lure Qi Lian step by step into repeating her past treachery, and this time, I would not give her the slightest chance to escape. Originally, sharing a room with Xiao Xing would have better lulled them into a false sense of security, but Xiao Ji's unexpected involvement had disrupted that part of my plan. Fortunately, the outcome remained unchanged. During the days he stayed with me, although Xiao Xing had been extremely cautious, careful observation still revealed traces of his secret communications. I refused to believe that after exchanging so many letters, They had made no demands of each other. That was why I had kept Xiaoxing under constant surveillance. The moment Xiaoxing went to buy that wine, I had guessed exactly what he intended to do. For a former crown prince to stoop to stealing a military seal for a woman, it was truly a blessing that he had never ascended to the throne. Once again, he was faced with a choice identical to the one he had made years ago, and he had chosen exactly the same path, without the slightest improvement. The only difference was that back then, his choice had grieved me deeply. Now, I felt absolutely nothing at all, while Xiaoxing was out buying the wine. I had already made all the necessary arrangements. I had never swallowed more than a sip of the wine he gave me, the rest I had secretly spat out. To avoid arousing his suspicion, I still put on a convincing act, feigning the effects of the drug. I had prepared for both eventualities. If the drug had been too potent, I would have let my deputy rouse me with needles. If it had been mild, I would have woken up on my own. Now, it was finally time to close the net, when I rushed out of the tent. The battlefield was ablaze with flames, and rivers of blood flowed across the ground. Everywhere my eyes fell, there were severed limbs and lifeless bodies. Xiaoxing stared at the clashing armies, his eyes filled with disbelief. How could this happen? All he had planned was to order a retreat, after helping Qi Lian this one last time. He had intended to sever all ties with his past once and for all. So why had the Qi army launched an attack? As Xiaoxing stood frozen in shock, a Qi soldier spotted him, his attire marking him as someone far above the rank of an ordinary soldier, and lunged at him with a sword. Caught off guard, Xiaoxing reacted just in time, but still suffered a deep gash on his arm. However, the attacker did not fare any better. Seizing the opportunity, Xiaoxing used the soldier's momentum to close the distance between them, then slit his throat in one swift motion. Blood sprayed across Xiaoxing's face, as he turned his head to wipe away the blood. He saw me walking out of the tent, and his movements froze. "You were supposed to be sound asleep." I finished the sentence he had left hanging. "You should consider yourself fortunate that I did not fall for your trick, otherwise, could you alone have borne the responsibility for the lives of 100?"
Despite his words about repayment, he didn't make any further moves after the kiss. Confused, I looked up and poked him. In response, Xiaoji pulled up my slipping collar, sensing my dissatisfaction. Xiaoji finally showed his first smile since we met. "I'll collect the debt later. Let's stamp a seal first." "Fine. Don't collect it then, no one cares." Even though I thought this, I still didn't give up. After a moment, he calmly pulled my hand out. That was a bit of a blow to my pride. To cover up my embarrassment, I coughed lightly and pretended to be serious. "Where is Xiaoxing?" "Brother Huang is being detained, waiting for your punishment." "Good." As I spoke, I made a few more unsuccessful attempts. After failing repeatedly, I climbed out of bed dejectedly. "I'm going to find Xiaoxing. Will you come with me? Let's go. I'll accompany you to see Brother Huang." The military camp was somewhat simple, and Xiaoxing was tied up outside the main tent. He looked as if he had been fished out of a pool of blood. His hair clung to his face in clumps, and his arms and legs were covered with obvious sword wounds, left untreated. Some of the lacerations had festered, looking terrifying. This was the fate of a traitor. No one would pity him. I walked over and squatted down in front of him. Did Prince Juan ever imagine he would end up like this today? Shi Yao, hearing my voice, he looked up and instinctively tried to stand, but was restrained by the chains. The iron chains pulled at his wounds, making him grunt in pain. "Does it hurt?" I smiled and reached out, pressing lightly on his festering wound. Several pieces of purple and swollen rotten flesh fell off. "It shouldn't hurt. When I first led troops a few years ago, I was too exhausted from the constant battles to treat my wounds, and they also festered like this. It looks scary, but when you cut off the rotten flesh, you don't feel a thing unless..." I paused, flipped my palm, and a dagger slipped out of my sleeve. I raised my hand and swung the dagger sharply at Xiaoxing, cutting off the entire festering area along with some of the surrounding bright red, healthy flesh. Amid Xiaoxing's shrill scream, I continued my words. Unless you cut off the flesh to stop the festering from spreading, only then does it hurt. Xiaozhi beside me suddenly grabbed my hand. His grip wasn't tight, but it trembled slightly. I stroked the palm of his hand with my fingertips to comfort him, but back then, that pain was a great encouragement to me, because it was proof that I was still alive. To keep my fighting spirit alive, I cut off my own festering flesh and pulled out arrows by myself, but back then, I had only just reached marriageable age. There are only two people I have ever relied on in this world, my father and my fiancé, but my fiancé was an accomplice to all this, and my father was disabled because of it. You always say Qi Lian is pitiful, but when I was alone and fighting for my life on the edge of a sword, did you ever feel the slightest bit of sympathy for me? These words were not so much for Xiaoxing as they were for me to pour out all the pent-up emotions. Shiyao. Xiaoxing shed 2 lines of remorseful tears. I'm sorry for you and master. I thought she wasn't that kind of person. What you thought? Did he really think these 3 light words could wash away all his sins? He always thought Qi Lian was alone and helpless, that she had been driven to despair, that she was the purest lotus in the world, deceived by evil people. Even with the lessons of the past, he still trusted her unconditionally. I didn't know if he loved Qi Lian too much, or if he was just too stupid. It seemed that the sarcasm in my eyes was too obvious, stimulating Xiaoxing. He held his breath, snatched the dagger from me, and before I could defend myself, stabbed it into his own scapula. His lifelong martial arts were destroyed in an instant. What I owe you can never be repaid, he said, his face turning even bluer and paler from his existing injuries and the self-inflicted destruction of his martial arts. I only beg you to give me a chance to make amends. I will marry you with a grand ceremony, and spend the rest of my life compensating you. Marry me. I stood up and looked down at him. What makes you think you can? This wasn't the first time Xiaoxing had said he would marry me. The last time I heard it was after he drugged me, as if to make up for what he had done. It was as if marrying him was some great favor, but I didn't love him anymore. All his privileges had been based on my love for him. Now that I no longer loved him, he was nothing. The youthful infatuation had faded away quickly, and after the hatred dissipated, only emptiness remained. Don't speak so confidently, Prince Juan. After all, I haven't dealt with Qi Lian in the capital yet. I will send her back to Qi. Guess what her fate will be? Although Qi Lian was a princess of Qi, this battle had dealt Qi a humiliating defeat, making it seem as if they had been tricked, and the one who tricked them was undoubtedly Qi Lian, who had actively sent them secret messages. The Emperor of Qi had always been suspicious, and he would never trust a princess who had been sent as a hostage since childhood. Qi Lian's fate would definitely be worse than being directly executed. Xiaoxing's body trembled. He wanted to speak, but no words came out. One's actions should be innocent before heaven and earth. Praise and blame will be judged by history, I said slowly as he fell silent. Xiaoxing, have you ever felt guilty? These were the words my father had said to the late emperor before Xiaoxing and Xiaozhi were born. Later, Xiaoxing and Xiaozhi were born. Xiaoxing closed his eyes, hiding the deep remorse in them. I am guilty. I had seen the scene I wanted to see, and I didn't want to hear any more of his words. I leaned lazily against Xiaozhi and yawned. Shiyao, even if you don't want to marry me anymore, please consider what I said that day. What he had said that day. Xiaozhi was not a good match. Emperors had no love for their children. I looked at Xiaozhi, thought for a moment, and stretched out my arms to him. Your Majesty, I'm sleepy. In response, he lifted me up horizontally. The wind blew across the desert, and Xiaoxing suddenly shouted, I will repay what I owe you with my life. If there ever comes a day when you don't want this anymore, I will take you out of the palace. Xiaozhi's footsteps paused. He turned around, smiling faintly. That is, if Brother Huang is still alive to repay it then. After recovering from my injuries at the border for a few days, we set off back to the capital. Xiaozhi should have returned earlier, but he was worried about my injuries and insisted on coming back with me. During the days I was recovering at the border, she sent another formal letter of surrender, agreeing to cede 5 cities and not to invade for 100 years. After ceding these cities, It would be difficult for Qi to launch an invasion again in the next few years, even if they wanted to. I was not interested in the cession of the cities. Xiaozhi sent people to handle everything. Xiaoxing had been locked outside the main tent all this time, surviving on only a little hard steamed bun and brown rice water every day. Using the knife I had left behind, he had cut off all the festering flesh on his body, as if he wanted to experience all the pain I had once endured. Other than that, his days locked outside the tent were like those of a living dead. He hung his head and said nothing all day, only looking up when I passed by or when he heard something related to me. Every time I listened to my subordinates report these things, Xiaozhi would look nervous beside me. I asked, "What are you afraid of?" "I'm afraid you'll feel compassion for him and fall in love with him again." "It's impossible." My denial was firm. And Xiaozhi perked up again. "That's right. You liked Brother Huang before only because I hadn't grown up yet, in terms of appearance, martial arts, and..." Before he could finish speaking, I kicked him out. Xiaoxing said Xiaozhi had changed, but I was still the only person in the world who could kick the emperor. After returning to the capital, the deeds of Xiaoxing and Qi Lian had already spread all over the streets and alleys, earning them the abuse of thousands of people. Xiaoxing was stripped of his title as Prince Juan, demoted to a commoner, and then volunteered to return to the border to garrison it. But his martial arts had been destroyed, and there was the lesson of the past, coupled with his current status as a commoner. Even if he returned to the border, he could only start as a common soldier. It was even uncertain whether the soldiers at the border would accept him again. But these things no longer had anything to do with me. As for Qi Lian, she had long been divorced by Prince Shi and was now imprisoned in the dungeon. Her hand and foot tendons had been severed, and she had become a useless person. I had originally planned to make her pay for my father's leg, but now it seemed unnecessary. When she saw me, Qi Lian's voice suddenly turned shrill. "It's you, you poisonous woman. Why won't you let me go?" "Let you go?" I found it amusing. "When did you ever let me go?" Qi Lian screamed. She no longer had the gentle and delicate appearance she once had. Now she looked no different from a madman. To avoid losing my appetite, I patted the dust off my skirt and prepared to turn around and leave. Just as I was about to leave, Qi Lian called out to me. Her voice was hoarse from the previous hysterical shouting. "Don't you want to know who turned me into this?" "No, it's the current emperor," she insisted on saying even though I didn't want to hear it. "Colluding with a tiger, do you really think you can get out unscathed?" I glanced at her, too lazy to waste words with her, and opened the prison door. Outside the prison door stood Xiaozhi. He seemed to have heard our conversation, his expression hidden in the shadows. I sighed. At this point, I had long known that I could not get out unscathed. This was no place to talk after all. I took Xiaozhi's hand, intending to lead him away. The moment my fingertips touched his palm, his hand trembled slightly, as if he wanted to pull away, but in the end, he tightened his grip on mine. His hold was so firm that my knuckles pressed together. It hurt. So this meant that all the time Xiaozhi had held my hand before, he hadn't even used half his strength. My mind wandering with random thoughts, I led him to a quiet alley corner. "Does your Majesty have something to say to me?" Xiaozhi parted his lips, but remained silent for a long while. I sighed softly. "Then shall I ask, and your Majesty answer?" His expression flickered with hesitation, but finally, he nodded. "Did you cut Qi Lian's tendons?" "Yes." He had already left the palace back then. When he received my message, he was overcome with shock and anxiety, so he sent someone to keep watch on Qi Lian. Later, he got an urgent report saying that the Qi army had launched a surprise attack. He immediately guessed it was Qi Lian's doing, so he issued a secret order to sever her hand and foot tendons. That night at the palace banquet, I didn't actually stumble into the wrong room drunk, did I? You were the one who carried me, unconscious from the alcohol, into that room, weren't you? Xiaozhi trembled again. He looked up at me, and after a long pause, spoke cautiously. "Yes, so that's how it was. I knew my drinking habits weren't the best, but I wasn't such a mess that I'd wander into the wrong bed. Then when you approached me, were you after something?" This time, Xiaozhi fell silent for even longer. After what felt like an eternity, he said, "Yes, what were you after?" "You." He licked his lips. "You probably don't know this, But I've loved you since we were children. But back then, you were Brother Huang's fiancé. Every time Xiaoji made a mistake and wanted to plead for forgiveness, he always forgot to address himself formally. I pretended not to notice this detail. And then, when Brother Huang broke off the engagement, I'll admit I felt a selfish, terrible sense of joy. He had always thought that if that engagement fell through, he would finally have a chance with me. But unfortunately, not long after, news came from the border. The military situation was suspiciously urgent, and before he could thoroughly investigate the matter, the late emperor passed away, forcing him to ascend the throne as the new emperor. He began to recount the story from the very beginning. Later, I found out you were investigating Qi Lian, and I guess there must be more to what happened that year, but she hid her tracks too well, and her lips were sealed tight. There was little I could do to help you except push things along. So the rumors about Qi Lian's affair back then, aside from my deliberate machinations, you were also spreading them. Yes, at the time, my throne was not yet secure. That was the most I could do. He pulled a necklace from around his neck. A delicately carved red jade pendant identical to the ones hanging from my earlobes. You wanted revenge, so I helped you get it. He had involved himself in my schemes, shared my bed, all just to give me a reason to start my revenge. His supposed desire for the cities was the excuse I needed to march my army to the border. So many years had passed, I had changed, and Xiaoji had changed too. The little boy who used to trail after me like a shadow had long since become a deeply thoughtful emperor. But from start to finish, there was only one thing he had ever wanted. I let go of his hand and leaned against the bluestone wall. I have one last question. Xiaoji stared at his empty palm, swallowing down his disappointment. Ask me, does the throne of our dynasty still lack a queen? Xiaoji froze where he stood for a long time. Then, abruptly, he pulled me into his arms. He tried his best to contain himself, but his voice still trembled uncontrollably. Yes, at this point, no one could walk away unscathed. Xiaoji had risked everything to join my game, and I was willing to meet his sincerity with my own.